Sorry, I am freezing, so I'm really gonna try and not do this in this sweatshirt the whole time. Apologies in advance. Happy Future Tech. Everyone having fun? Is anyone gonna fall asleep because you ate too much at lunch, and then I'm gonna have to like look at you while I'm talking and be like, oh my God, I'm putting people to sleep. It will be one of you. At least one of you will, I promise. And then we'll all make fun of you. No, I'm just kidding. We won't. I'm Maddy. I work on the .NET team at Microsoft. I'm a product manager, and I'm currently the product lead of .NET Aspire, which is very fun and very chaotic. Were any of you in Glenn's workshop earlier today on Aspire? Okay, great. So that means like, oh, we got one. All right, you might have a little bit of repetitive intro stuff. Aspire is really cool. It's like the new thing. It's the new cool kid in .NET land. And it was originally created because people were building apps with .NET, believe it or not. And it turns out building apps in the real world gets a little bit difficult. It's not like a usual, demo file new, look, this goes to the database, everything is great, oh my God. You have to deal with things like shopping and holiday shopping, and when your APIs just have to scale massively for no reason, and then you run up a crazy high bill, and your business department comes to you and is like, what are you doing? Things like how you can't stick a USB into like a server anymore in a room. If you have to actually manage and see what's going on and diagnose servers, you have to be able to do that programmatically. You have to have those things in place. You can't just go flash a new update to things, right? And so we on the .NET team were hearing this more and more from customers, especially as they were moving from these like monolithic Windows Server applications to these cheaper microservice, super fast, scalable, blah, 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 blah. And we kept building stuff in .NET all over the place. We just kept building stuff. I'm gonna try not to swear. I already almost just did, but I didn't, so it's good. Poly's a really big one that we hear about a lot. It's like resiliency, right? It just automatically retries. It's named because Poly, like a parrot, it parrots it, like multiple. I just found that out like 2 months ago. It's my new favorite fun fact. Everyone knew that except for me, also. But things like we have logging built into .NET. We have great support for things like OpenTelemetry, which has kind of become the de facto standard for your dashboards, whether they're Grafana or whatever, right? But we didn't actually turn these on. We were just like, yeah, people will figure out how to use it. And most of you did. But the reality is, you start an app, right? You get your website working. You get your database working. Everything talks to each other. You're like, cool, great, awesome. I'm a genius. Microservices, super easy. Now I have multiple APIs. Okay, well, it's kind of a pain in the ass to try them all, like, develop locally, but maybe I'll just put a couple of them on staging, and I'll run 2 of them. I'll have some script. I'll do Docker Compose. I'm really cool. Oh, and I have this database, blah, blah, blah. And then the real world comes into play, and your app becomes a complete disaster. And this is, I'll actually show you what this app is. This is the kind of canonical real world demo app we've been using at Microsoft and keeping up to date. It's called eShop, but we'll look at it later. And now there's like AI, and everyone's boss is like, can you put AI in this literally everywhere? And you're like, I don't even know I can't even get my app to start consistently on my machine. How am I supposed to put a bot in this? And that's really where a lot of the inspiration from Aspire came. That, and also just the amount of words and things that have to do with the cloud. I think this is a year old, this screenshot, from the cloud native, CNCF thing. This was, at that time, all of the things people used to build apps in the cloud and handle those things, right? The manageability and scalability and blah, blah, blah. There's just words, right? Like this one, spiff. What? Helm is my favorite. I'm like, these are real words that people use that mean actual things. And now all of a sudden Helm and my Helm charts and all this stuff matters? Thanos? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? And so what would happen, and what we heard from folks, and what was happening to us as we were trying to build our stuff internally at Microsoft, is people would be like, well, I picked this thing from messaging, and I picked this thing from databases, and I picked this thing from storage, and then I also have this thing for my scalability, and then I also have to do keys and blah, blah, blah. And I actually don't know how any of these individual things work. And now someone on my team has to become an expert in each of these things for us to actually be able to use them, right? When in reality, a lot of these things kind of fit in the same bucket. They all do things differently, right? That's why there are all these different products, and some work with different languages or different runtimes or whatever. But there are some patterns that are pretty extractable, and that was kind of where Aspire started. One of our favorite things that we talk about is time to F5, right? Because for a long time, people were like, I wish I could just sit down and open Visual Studio and hit F5 and my app would start, instead of just all the other stuff that I have to do to make it work. And so Aspire is, what it actually is, tools, templates, and packages, right? It's a variety, it's a specific SDK style .NET project, right? It has a bunch of NuGet packages you can build in. It's turning things on, it's code. But what Aspire gives you is this much more streamlined dev loop, inner loop, whatever you want to call it. You know, when you sit at your computer, you make a change, you want to see that change. It gives you a dashboard locally, so you can actually see what is going on between all the pieces of your app instead of flipping between a bunch of different console windows. We give you these integrations, and that's mostly where the NuGet packages come in. And so those are things that we just give you the sort of ish sane defaults, best practices, whatever you want to call them, for basic things. So, okay, cool. This is how you get the connection string from your Postgres, from your API to your Postgres instance, and we just plug it in for you. And then we also have a currently like less developed, but still coming up into its own deployment story, which we'll talk about too if we have time. But what's really important about Aspire, we came up with these set of key principles a couple months ago. My favorite one is that it is building blocks, not black boxes, right? So any of these things you can crack open and do the way you were already doing them. You don't have to like worry about replatforming onto Aspire. There's nothing that actually changes in your production app, right? We're just giving you helper methods and extension methods and turning things on. You don't deploy Aspire in any meaningful way. You deploy your app. Aspire just connects all the dots for you so that when you're building it, you don't like hate your life. Yeah, correct, thank you. Oh, and Aspire is very much open. So we like to say we're like modern open. We are Microsoft first, right? Like we're gonna have the most support for Azure because we are, we sit with them in teams. I can message people who work on Azure and be like, hey, what is this? But we are supporting any, like AWS, we've worked closely with them to get some stuff out. You can just do vanilla old Kubernetes with Aspire. Like you can deploy exactly the way you're deploying today. You can deploy an Aspirified app on-prem. That's allowed, right? It's really a developer tool. And so what it actually gives you, before I start to show you what on earth is going on here, where we look at those like 4 blocks, right? Inner loop and blah, 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 blah. The first thing we always hear is onboarding, right? We gave our new intern a laptop, and they git cloned the repo, and they hit F5, and everything started working. The Xbox team in particular, they had like a 2-week onboarding process that they got down to like an afternoon, and most of it is just waiting for permissions to propagate now. Unbelievable. The Xbox team also actually gave us this good quote about the dashboard. So they were pushing up changes to their telemetry and their metrics, letting them deploy to prod, and then seeing if they were recording things right, because they had no way to test these things locally. And so with Aspire, with the OTel support and what we give you on your machine, you can actually see the kind of data you're getting already. Make sure it's all right. Make sure you have everything you need before you go spin the bits up into the cloud. Because everything's a NuGet package, you can just make your own integrations that say, hey, this is the data platform we use at our company, or this is what you have to do for role management or user login or blah, blah, blah. And then you can just ship that out to your teams. So if you're in a bigger enterprise, right, and you have a lot of standards, you can standardize via Aspire in a really easy way. And then for deployment, we make it so that you don't have to like all of a sudden learn Bicep now because you're just a developer and you're just trying to do your thing. And then someone's like, oh, put this online. And you're like, oh no, a whole new world. We did briefly have YAML free in like big letters on this slide. And the marketing person was like, please take that off. And we were like, but it is, it's YAML free. And he was like, yeah, but DevOps people like YAML. And I was like, do they? Okay, I don't want to fight about it. It's fine. So because we only have 45 minutes, I'm gonna skip the usual here is when I show you like, oh, like file new app. We'll do that after I show you the first little bits of this. The way that Aspire works, we have on your machine, right? And by dev machine, I also mean your dev box, your GitHub code space, your dev container. I don't know, however you build your stuff, right? If you can run .NET runtime, .NET SDK on it, you can use Aspire. And what you do is you define everything in this app host, which is kind of like Docker Compose on crack. Sorry, I'm supposed to stop using that phrase, actually. Oh, it's fine. And with the app host, we're able to do service discovery and environment variable injection and configuration stuff so that when you hit F5, not only does everything start, but you get this dashboard that shows you interesting stuff. And then, of course, those integrations, which are just NuGets with things turned on. And they're all just code. None of the NuGets we ship as like an aspire.redis or aspire.sql or aspire.whatever. We don't actually reinvent the wheel. We just add a couple helper methods on top of it for connection and setup. You can pull in the aspire.redis package and use literally nothing from Aspire-ish. You can just use the vanilla Redis stuff. It's all subclass on it. So then what's cool about this is if you really want to get fancy, you can run a little command and get a JSON file that represents that app host. Then you can throw it over the fence to your DevOps people and be like, here, deploy it. Good luck. Or right now, you can use AZD, the Azure Developer command line tool, to in like 2 commands, just do like AZD up and deploy it to a fully like insulated Azure Container Apps environment that your dashboard also runs in, so you can see your real-time metrics in the cloud. This is like I said, this is more like the infancy part of the story, right? I think in reality, most like actual developers at actual companies do not go like, okay, time to deploy to prod, ACD up, boop-a-doop-a-doo. Like you have processes and pipelines and all that stuff. But the concept is kind of extensible, and you can put AZD up in your CI/CD. Or if you're using a whole mishmash of things like app service and whatever, and fabric and blah, 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 you can, do that the way you're doing it without having to do any of the Aspire stuff. So the way that the inner loop works, and then after this we'll flip to code, but I want to show you this first because it gets kind of overwhelming. This app host, it's a C# project. It's like my app.apphost. And it is one file, unless you want to build a bunch of extensions on it, which you can do. And it is the builder pattern. And you say, give me a builder. In my builder, I'm going to add a project, and that project's an API service. And what's cool is I just give it like a little magic string that says API service, and we'll see where that comes back. A project reference, pretty basic. And then I also can assign it a variable so that when I add something else, like my front end, and in this example, I'm adding a npm, so this could be Vite or Vite or Vite or whatever, or Dino, or I don't know, JavaScript framework of the week. You can just add that. You can give that a name. That's my web front end. You can tell it where that code base lives. It's just code. We know how to run JavaScript here. And then you can do cool things like tell it about the API's existence. And all that's doing is just my .NET project now is going to Aspire, shove an environment variable in my NPM app that tells it where it is and any other things it needs to know about it. It's connection strings, blah, blah, blah. We'll come back to wait for it too. That's also a cool thing. And then you can start adding actual stuff, not just your own code. In this case, I just said storage, right? So you can do add Azure storage, or you could do add AWS. I don't know what the commands are. There's my magic string. I can run my storage locally as an emulator so that I don't have to actually store things in my production environment when I'm testing things. Then you could also do something like publish as connection string. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And then you add things like your blob storage or your whatever. And then in my API, I can go ahead and I can reference that. And now that knows how to talk to my storage. And so when my API says, oh, go to storage and store this thing in a blob, it can just do that in the emulator or in the cloud or wherever it's running. So I am going to show you one of our sample apps. This is I'm going to show you the first one is our like basic-ish sample app. We have a whole giant repo of I'm sorry, you're looking at my pets? This is the best VS Code extension. It is literally called VS Code Pets. You just get to put pets in it. Like, look, hold on, loud one. I'll add a dog. Like, there's a dog. See? Look at him. And then you can throw the little ball, and they all chase after the ball. I'm not even kidding. I, like, truly like a toddler while I'm, like, waiting for builds to spin. I just, like, go, I'm like, get through the ball. Oh, okay, wait. I just play with it, and then I'm like, oh, no, my thing started. Oh, there goes 45 minutes now. So Aspire's shop is in the Aspire samples repo, which has a bunch of things. Basically, any kind of example you find in our docs that has code is linked to a sample. But this is just a shop. It's just a shop page thing. And this is the app host program. And let me actually just bump this up one more time and then shrink that. And as you can see, this is just code. There's nothing magical happening here. We're doing some cool stuff. In this case, we're adding a Postgres instance, right? So this is a NuGet package. If I hover over this, it'll tell me where this came in. It's just a builder extension. I'm not naming it Postgres. I'm telling it that, Postgres has this thing called pgadmin, so I can do, exploration of my database in the browser. We're adding that. And then I'm doing this thing called with lifetime, which we'll look at in a sec. In this case, we're saying if I'm running it locally, I need to spin my container up with a data volume so it can actually store things and not just die every time I shut off the container. And then I'm doing my caching. I have my various databases. I have the database manager. We'll look at what this command does in a little bit. And then my projects, right? My service, my front end, and then I just do .run. And so we will run this. And C# DevKit is going to just be very nice to me today, right? Right? Wow, I think it actually is. The best part about running Aspire in DevKit on a Mac is that the browser launch is faster than Aspire launches. So it always shows you like, oh, I can't find the page. Just wait like 2 seconds, it will refresh. So there's quite a few things going on here. One is nothing's actually started. And that is because my runtime is unhealthy, which means that I don't actually have Docker open, or Podman, or container runtime of your choice. So Docker and Podman are the ones that we support out of the box. Did I actually type the right thing? Yes. So Docker's going to start up now, and what you'll see is things happening in here, because Aspire is now creating containers for all of the things that it needs a container for. Starting those things up, and then when they're alive, telling all these other things that they're allowed to start. Like, hey, basket cache, don't try to hit a cache that doesn't exist. Oh, the cache exists, you can start now. There is about 8 million things I could talk about in the dashboard. I'll try not to talk about 8 million things. But this is the website, right? It's a product thing. You click things, you add them to your cart or whatever. There's hovers, it's Blazor. It's on .NET 8, which is like criminal. I'm just kidding. Aspire, by the way, we are tip only, AKA you just have to stay updated if you want support. But we work with any supported version of .NET. It is out of band of .NET. So you don't need .NET 9 to use the latest Aspire. You can use .NET 8. And then when .NET 10 and Aspire 10 come out, we'll let you use whatever's supported. So I think it's 8 and 9 and 10 for a little bit. I don't know. We keep changing our minds. Don't ask me. So let's look at what's actually going on in the dashboard here too. So obviously I have my sources, which are projects or containers, and those sources match up with what Docker just created for me with these random numbers and letters. And then I have all my endpoints. So in this case, like the catalog service is an API. It actually, I'm on a Mac, command. It gives me the Swagger UI endpoint, so I can do like my API testing right here. That's just, you do that in the app code, right? You say app.isdevelopment.useSwagger or something. And then if I click on these things, I actually get a whole details pane. If you saw the original demo of Aspire, this came up from the bottom, and it was impossible to see everything. We moved it to the side. That is user experience design. It's been very helpful. And so it's a bunch of things, right? Like it shows you what it actually is, the resource, the process it's running on locally. if it has, as Aspire assigns ports, you can tell it, hey, always go and use port 4000. You can also say, Aspire, just do whatever you want, find something that's open, and then wire those things up. You can see what it's actually referencing. So in this case, it's the database manager is referencing the actual database resource, which is childed under Postgres, right? Back references means that something has to wait for it. So the catalog service itself has to make sure that the catalog manager is up before it starts. A lot of these wait for things really matter for dev, right? Like ideally in the cloud, you're not stopping and starting things all the time, ideally. But the with reference counts everywhere, right? Because that's just the environment variable. We have plain old ASP.NET health checks. You write one, you put it on the health endpoint, or you add it to the health check configuration with the DI and all that in your API project. We wire those right up for you. So you can see all your different health checks and their names right here. And then this is where like the magic happens. We just shove a bunch of stuff in your app, including all the things to set up OpenTelemetry, and then anything that you reference, you get either where it is or the connection string. So in this case, if I pop this up, it's showing me what the username is, what the generated password is for Postgres, and all this junk, what database it's supposed to be at, a whole lot of stuff. What is this? This is new. James, you monster. I'm very excited. The guy who wrote Newtonsoft JSON, everyone knows what that is? Yeah. He now just works on the Aspire dashboard for funsies. It's his job, but like it doesn't have to be. And he just keeps adding things to it. And every time I pull like a latest bit, I'm like, James, what have you done? This is so exciting. He's in Singapore. So he's literally the opposite time zone of me. So I'll wake up and I'll like go on GitHub and I'll be like, he murdered in like 12 PRs last night. It's very fun. The latest thing that I don't have on here yet is he actually has a little like graph view of all of these things that shows them all as little balls connected to each other. It's very cute. Okay. All right. On track. We're on track. Another thing that Aspire gives you is all the logs of everything. You can see them all in one place, which doesn't feel magical if you're someone who only ever has 2 projects. If you're someone who's tried to run something like this shop with all these different things by hand, and you're clicking between Docker and then 4 different terminals, and then the Visual Studio one, and then the Control F5, nuts, okay? Now you have them all here. Whoa, look at that. Logs. We've given you a couple options now too, so not that one. You can download them, which is cool, and throw them into log viewer of your choice. Or if you are fortunate to still have a QA team in the year of AI, shove them to your QA team and say, please, figure, help. We don't get those anymore. They say, go use Copilot. I say, oh. And then we structure them for you nicely too. So anything that's getting logs, we'll give you the structured version of it with the actual text. And if there's related traces, we'll show you that. And what a trace is exactly what you'd think it is. It is a trace on the internet. And so in this case, you can see the basket service is doing kind of a regular ping of things. There's a get from the catalog service. It's probably when the page loads. There's a database manager that was initialized at one point. And this is all OpenTelemetry. So OpenTelemetry has this concept of spans, and those are like the actual events that are happening. So if I refresh this a few times, like we'll see more things are happening. And that one was the first one. It was pretty long, which means my cache probably expired. So I can go and I can look at it. I can see the whole thing took, almost a whole second. And then these are how it's all broken up, right? And what things were happening kind of in parallel. There's some RPC stuff going on in here. You can just go and actually see how all the resources are talking to each other, which is very nice. And then we have metrics. I have heard 2 very different opinions on metrics. I've heard some people be like, this is the most amazing thing ever. I've also heard some people be like, I don't measure things on my desktop because that is not accurate of what it will be in the cloud. And I go, okay, that makes sense. What I like to use metrics for is signals. Like if something is taking way longer on my machine than I think it should, I know it's probably gonna take way longer than it should in the cloud. I'm not gonna say, oh, this thing is, I don't know, where's the one I want? Duration. Like, oh no, this thing took 0.05 seconds. oh, like I'm gonna say, oh, well, that's really bad compared to what it should be on my machine. But so that probably means in the cloud it's gonna be bad compared to what it should be in the cloud, but I'm also not gonna like try and drive that down because I'm not crazy. And that is the dashboard in a nutshell. So I mentioned PG admin, and that is now running in its own container here. That has the connection strings and all of the things it needs to talk to my Postgres instance. It's got its volume that I mounted it in, so you can actually save everything. My password, email, blah, blah, blah. And so what's cool about Postgres admin is it's just a web UI, so I can hit the endpoint that it spins up. We say, spin it up as an HTTP endpoint. Don't spin it up as TCP. I actually want to talk to this and use it in my browser. And it's going to tell me I'm out of date, and I go, yep, I know, don't look at me. And then I can go and see the things that are happening in my database here. So we're going to open up a bunch of tabs, and we're going to manually edit data because it's a demo, and I can do whatever I want. We're going to go into the catalog, which is, what populates this page and a half of content. And I'm going to go to right-click, view, edit data. Don't do this. You should not do this. You should write a query to do this. And I'm just going to copy-paste this one. Copy, paste. Yeah. I'm going to change the ID because I'm great. I'm going to say this is Maddie's purple hoodie. Oh, I'm going to say this is my future tech hoodie because I'm cool. Okay, I'm going to save the data changes. Okay. Now when I go in here, I'm going to refresh it because everything's cached, right? So the cache has to reload. And then, hey, I have Maddie's future tech hoodie. Cool. So you can just go and do this stuff and test, right? Or you can go and actually use the admin portal of your website where you would add this thing, right? You could do it the correct way. But, say that you test a bunch of stuff and you've sufficiently borked this. One thing we hear is, oh, so now I have to delete that container or like completely nuke that database. Or how do I reinitialize it? Do I have to stop and restart my database manager? How do I handle my migrations? How do I do that locally when I, don't actually have that need? What you can do in Aspire is something called custom commands on a resource. And so on the catalog database manager, which is the actual, let's zoom. The actual project that is doing my migrations and my database initialization, right? We have a custom command called reset database, and you can select the icon for it. And the icons are always very cute. And when you do this, it just reruns, in this case, the initialization. I'll show you how we hooked this up, right? So if I refresh it, no. Regular. My regular hoodie is not here anymore because I just nuked the database and reinitialized it the way that I would reinitialize it anyways. And so, yes, don't save my changes. The way that looks in code, I'm going to stop this, is this with HTTP command. And all I'm doing is passing in an endpoint. I'm saying when I hit this command on this resource, on my catalog database manager project, hit this endpoint on it. And then this is obviously what the command is called. And so if I go into that resource, that project, catalog, DB manager, program. I'm minimal APIs because I'm cool and modern. Very awesome. Thank you for the 3 people who laughed. I am just creating a reset database endpoint. I'm passing it the context that's coming in from the Aspire integration up here. Hold on. That's from the Aspire side of the Postgres thing, add NPG SQL database connection or whatever. I'm passing it the things it needs to know there, and then I'm saying, okay, make sure it's nuked, and then restart it. And then I'm just doing my regular initialization things I would do, just like I would in normal world. So there's something else that happens in your client code when you Aspirify, which is the official verb, an app. And that is, where's the program? We give you this, builder.add service defaults. So this is really the only tangible code change you will see in your app code, but it's not actually a code change because all it is a reference to a project that we add by default that you can delete because it is a project. And the service defaults we define for you in this project, it's like literally a template that just do the stuff we want you to do. So turn on your OTel and add health checks by default and do service discovery. And you can click into all these things, see exactly what we're doing. Or I can actually, this one's better. Let's see this one. I can see, okay, now we're doing, okay, logging, we should include the scopes, we should format the messages, cool. Okay, metrics, we're gonna do these things. We're gonna give it the basic ASP.NET Core instrumentation. But because this is just a C# file in a project, you can just change it. So if you don't use OTel, you use a different telemetry kind of connection, go ahead. If you don't use health checks or you want a specific type of health check always initialized, go ahead. All of these things. It's not a black box, right? It feels very magic, and it's not. The other thing we'll do here is we'll do map default endpoints, which is basically saying, observe the Aspire service discovery injection and make sure that you connect to the right place and you toss that back to Aspire. But again, it's just environment variable, so it would do the same thing in the cloud. What was the other thing in here that's cool? So yeah, this one, in this case, we're extending the service defaults at OpenTelemetry with extra tracing. That has to do with the database initializer. Not actually magic, despite the fact that it feels like it. Where else do I want to look here? Okay. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to go back into my program. The other thing that we have, no, I'm going to switch over to eShop. That's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the actual big project. That's the one I showed you in the slide. Open recent. Nope, this one. Why did you, oh, because it was minimized. I do know how to use my computer, believe it or not. Oh, fun fact, because I saw the little icon. If you are an Aspire person, Copilot will not take your job yet because it has no idea Aspire exists almost entirely. We've been using the new, if you're in the VS Code Insiders, there's this new agent mode where it will tell you what it's thinking and doing, and then you can be like, yeah, go ahead, add that package. Yeah, go ahead, do that. It keeps trying to write all the service defaults in my app host. And I'm like, no, that's literally, and I say, no, that's not where those go. And it goes, okay, and then it does the same thing. So Aspire's great job security, no. The more I work with AI, the more I realize it's just a way to get me to stop putting off starting things. And then it starts it, and then I just have to fix everything. And that's good, because I still have to actually do my job, and it means that all my time and training was not for nothing. But it also makes me actually start doing my job instead of just sitting there and being like, I don't know where to start. Oh my God, it's just so complicated. It also summarizes all my notes for me now, which is probably the best part of AI. But I work for Microsoft. I have to say AI is amazing. It's part of the job now. Okay. Various other things going on in eShop. So this is very similar to Aspire Shop, just bigger with AI stuff, more APIs, more stuff. We're doing this thing in here called with environment, which is also passing various endpoints in, even though it's not actually referenced. It's, all over the place. Come on, let's go. I know. It takes a second to start everything up. I get it. And there are some other things going on in the dashboard here too. So in this case, right, the event bus and the Postgres, those little pin, that's what that container lifetime means. So instead of me, whenever I stop my app, tearing everything down and pulling it all back up, that tells Docker, don't kill those just because I stopped running the app. Another Aspire note that I'm not going to demo because it involves too many switching between windows. Hot reload does work the way it would usually. This is important. No. That sounds like my alarm, actually. That's a little traumatic. Yeah, okay, good morning. Aspire hot reload works the way hot reload works, right? Everything's actually running under the debugger in Aspire, which is cool. So if I hit a breakpoint in any of these projects, I can actually hit it. I don't have to start them all individually under a bunch of separate debuggers. And that means that if you use hot reload under the debugger, it works the way it would work under the debugger. If you use it as if it's .NET Watch, if you start Aspire with .NET Watch, right, then hot reload works as if it's .NET Watch. So again, not super magic, even though it feels like it. So one thing I want to show you here is why we have all these magic strings, right? What is Webhooks API? What is, I don't know, what's another one? Catalog API. What's really nice about those is when you go into the, things, like let's see, what's referencing my catalog API? The front end is, right? Web app with reference catalog API. If I go into my web app, we go into program. Error. Oh, there's a forwarder. Yep. Where's catalog? Where's catalog? Layout? Let's find out. Main layout? Eraser? I don't know. Hold on. We'll do basket because it's easier. That's the model, obviously. Checkout info, model. Service. Here's the magic. This is a gRPC client that's just, doing the gRPC things, and you're mapping it to various baskets. To get the basket URL, where on earth is this? Oh. Hold on. We keep updating things. I'm going to find it. It's not in usings. It's not in... I should just really control click my way to success, but I'm not. Okay, there we go. I found it. I know how things work. This is how you create the URL. It is the same magic string you defined in the app host. And so literally I'm just saying, yeah, this is my gRPC client. It's that basket client. You saw all that code. It's literally plain old gRPC client code. In this nice little extensions file, because we're good engineers, I say, hey, by the way, the basket needs to know about the API. And the API is called Basket API. Go resolve that for me, and Aspire will do it. Same thing with giving it an auth token so that you can do your cores or web things that I try not to think about. Various event bus subscriptions we set up all in here. Whole different things. So from the client app, right, like the code app, not the Aspire part, you can just use these magic strings to talk to everything. And those are the things that show up in the dashboard as, let's go to my web app, not just references, but environment variables. So for Redis, or for RabbitMQ for the event bus, it gives me that. For my service, like my basket API, it gives me the port it's running on. That's it. So, okay, that's Aspire in a nutshell. We're gonna talk about deployment for a little bit because it's fun. We looked at the dashboard. Briefly with integrations, I kind of touched upon this, but to put it in a nice, I keep hitting the wrong button. To put it in a nice slide diagram for you, the way that this works is there's two types, right? We have the hosting integration. That's the thing that starts everything up. That's the one that you put into the app host. So those are aspire.hosting.redis, aspire.hosting.whatever. And then in your actual project is where you have those client integrations. So that was that add npgsql connection thing. So that's aspire.npgsql.whatever. You can also start literally anything. Like in the first slide demo I showed you was, you can start NPM, you can start Python, you can do a whole bunch of different stuff. We have integrations already for a bajillion things. And then we have a whole other community toolkit. And so there are just more being added every day. Yes, Go is an Aspire integration. Thank you. It was before yesterday. We all like Go. It's fine. But then you can also extend Aspire with just like Docker files. So if you already have your own way to start a container, however you do that already, just like shove that in Aspire. Just say, add Docker file, call it Python inference. Here's the args you have to pass for my Docker file. Here's where you should start it. Here's any environment variables you should shove in it and keep it alive, right? Like that's it. We do have the integration version. So to give you an idea of what an integration would do, if you want like Python setup the way that you should do Python setup, that's all you have to do with the Python Aspire hosting Python package, right? But if you want that full control, you can go and do the Dockerfile away. You can start Docker composes from Aspire. I don't care what you do. Just do whatever you want. AWS Works. They're awesome. They did a ton of work. They actually have one big hosting integration right now that gives you like the entire AWS CLI. So they're slowly breaking things out as we go. But yeah, they've been great. Azure Functions works now. Azure Functions and Maui have been difficult because they use a different builder pattern than literally everything else in .NET. Why? I don't know. I worked on Maui. You'd think I should have known before. I did not. But Azure Functions, we've updated. Maui, Gerald, who is 4 rooms over, is fixing. He sent me a video last night, so basically fixed. So yeah, functions you can now launch from the app host. That's been a huge thing we've heard from folks. That's the samples repo link. Aspire-samples, very, very difficult to remember. Aspire-samples. And then with my 4 minutes, I want to talk about deployment. So I've said about 8 million times, and I'm going to make it 8 million and one. You can just keep deploying the way you are deploying today. Just take whatever environment variables are mapped to those magic strings and make sure that they are mapped as the correct environment variable in your whatever it is you use to spin things up, right? Or your configuration or your secrets, I don't know, whatever word you want to use for your cloud thing. And so then you can use things like the AWS CDK with that integration or just vanilla to deploy it. Or you can use the Azure Dev CLI and Visual Studio. And those two things right now deploy to what we call Azure Container Apps, which is, I started calling it the Aspire of cloud services, and they did not like that very much because they're like, that's not what it is. And I was like, but it is though. It's just like, it's kind of like, it does everything for you in a way that makes sense by default. And when you're ready to bump out of it, you can bump out of it. It's more constrained than Aspire is, right? Like you can't just take your container apps environment and turn it into AKS Kubernetes, but you know, it gives you a lot of the defaults. It puts everything in a really nice virtual network so they can all only talk to each other unless you say something else can talk to you. It makes it foolproof for someone like me to accidentally rack up a bill on Azure, and then the admin emails me and is like, hey, Maddie, you spent $1,000 last month on Azure. Why? And I go, oh my God, I had a demo that I forgot I deployed. True story. The AI stuff, man, that rings you up real quick. That runs the bill. I can see why all these companies keep asking us to build AI stuff, because man, that... the way that AZD works with Aspire is if you run AZD init in a folder and it sees an Aspire app host, it says, cool, I know how to talk to Aspire. It does the translation for you. The way that you would be able to AZD basically any other project, you can get it to spit out all the biceps so you can actually look at it and edit it before you deploy it, and then you just run AZD up. It's like, okay, pick your subscription, and you're like, cool, and it goes, okay, bye, here's the link, and then that's how you run up a bill. So for devs, especially, I say this all the time, like if you're testing, right, or if you want to set up a staging environment, or if you want like kind of a cheap, quick and dirty way to feel how this thing might scale, ACA is the way to do it. Like don't bother with Kubernetes until you have someone who wants to actually bother with Kubernetes, okay? Which is, I don't think most of us. Anyone like a big Kubernetes guy in here? Like KubeCon level, like I love it. Oh, I see one guy nodding his head. You won't raise your hand though. You'll never out yourself. I get it. If you have people like that in your company, then do whatever you want. If you have people like me in your company, use ACA. And you can customize those things. Again, like the rest of Aspire. So we're just saying here, like, yeah, make this particular project, my API project, make that able to scale to 0 when it's at rest, right? Make sure I can use my custom domain and my certs and Key Vault and blah, 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 blah. So, absolutely nailed it on the timing. Get .NET 9 if you don't have it. If you have .NET 8, that's also fine. To install Aspire, you don't actually install anything. The only thing you need are the project templates. Or you can literally clone any existing Aspire repo or project, Aspirified project, whether that's from our samples or whatever, and just F5. Like you don't have to install anything beyond .NET to get Aspire to work. But you will want to do like .NET new install aspire.project templates, I think, so that you can get the file new and like, oh, this is how it works. To add Aspire to your existing app, in Visual Studio, you go right-click Add Aspire, creates the app host, and then it's like, cool. And then you just kind of start plugging things in. Like, you'll run it, and you'll be like, oh, that should really wait for that. Let me add a wait for. Oh, that needs that environment variable. You can also just add it as literally a project launcher and not touch any other stuff, right? Like, I can just add all my projects and say start them all up so I can debug them, and that's the end of the day. In Visual Studio Code, you do the same thing. I'm on a Mac. That's what I use. So anyways, that's it. I'm going to go hang out at the Microsoft booth for a little bit before we skedaddle. So feel free to come say hi. And thank you very much.